and welcome to another episode of Point of Order. Sorry for any earlier inconvenience. We had a technical problem. Point of Order is there to give the accuracy because what happens in politics is that a lot of negative propaganda gets put out there and people absorb it as the gospel truth. And we have to put a stop to that. Quite frankly, we have to tell our own stories. So today, to tell his own story and his story about educational reform in Bermuda, we have the Honorable Diallo V. Rabain, JPMP, and I'll turn it over to you, Minister.
And thank you, Chris, and welcome to your listening audience. Yes, I do firmly believe, exactly as you say, that we need to tell our own story and get rid of some of the negativity and mistruths that are often out there. For just giving a little bit about myself, I first entered for frontline politics in 2011 when I was named as a senator, a government senator. I have the unique history of being a government senator, an opposition MP, and a government MP, which not that many people have had that opportunity to actually be. But prior to entering frontline politics, I would say when I returned from school in 1995, I've always been at the forefront of giving back to my community, whether it be through career volunteer service or through my fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. In terms of political activism, that probably started around 2003, and I've been a member of numerous boards throughout the government, as well as sat on many boards and many things that have given back to the public in terms of volunteer work. So when the natural progression for me to politics was, after being on things like the Board of Education, the Board of Governors for the Bermuda College, on the CURE board, on the Architecture Advisory Council, on the Road Safety Council, and things like that. It was the natural thing was to move into politics. Moving through PLP branches, the branch where I resided, I've been every officer within the PLP branch, including all the way up into being the caucus rep, the CC rep for caucus was my first introduction to the real, cut and thrust. As you know, you sit in that caucus room, you know how that those conversations can go.
Let's not paint. We're not doing any propaganda. Those conversations are very frank. That's all. That's really
they are, and that's what I said. And believe it or not, Chris, myself and current Minister Jason Hayward were CC reps the caucus at the same time at one point.
What does that speak to?
That speaks to our commitment to seeing Bermuda be a better place. It speaks to our commitment and understanding that the Progressive Labor Party there's a fundamental difference in philosophy between the Progressive Labor Party and the One Bermuda Alliance, previously known as the United Bermuda Party. And I think the biggest thing that I can point out is it's shown through the things that we do is that we have a much more caring approach to governance of this island, and we make no apologies for ensuring that there is equal fairness throughout, as much as we can try to change the political landscape to provide for all of the persons of Bermuda, and not just particular segments.
Well, that's a good answer, but that wasn't the answer I was looking for. The answer I was looking for, as Steve Harvey would say, the number one answer is that it speaks to the fact that both yourself and now Minister Jason Hayward came up through the ranks, right? You have other parties that just parachute people in, right? Let's be frank.
Let's be very honest, and
they put them out of nowhere and put them in a spot, and they say, "Hey, go run against the PLB," right? So
yes, and we're starting to see that now. We're starting to see that now with some of the candidates we see from the opposition.
Right. So in the PLP, you have to earn a spot. You have to come in at the literally at the grassroots, and work your way up through the party if you want to be even a candidate, right? We're not just dropping candidates out of nowhere. You have to understand the philosophy of the Progressive Labor Party. But I digress. But it's not
But
just so.
but also, Chris, I would also say that both yourself, myself, and previously mentioned Minister Haywood, we come from very strong families that
Mhm.
also have shown us the way and shown us that this is the way to be if you want to be a positive and productive citizen of your country, and that is to give back and constantly be looking at how you can give back to your country.
And we have a good afternoon from Miss Tyra Simmons from up in Somerset. How you doing, Tyra? So tell us about moving from caucus into being an elected minister or elected.
um, well, one thing, Chris, is it's really weird for me because it doesn't seem like it fits my personality. But I'd rather be discovered than to boast about the things that I do. I just like for people to naturally gravitate towards it. And I was just as shocked as anyone else when then Premier Paula Cox called and asked if I would consider being a senator back in 2011, because I thought I was still working my way through the various organs of the party, and at that point I actually had my eyes set on becoming the chairman of the party at one point. But it was the year it was in 2010. I was the chairman of the delegates conference, and she said was just watching me handle myself as the chairman of the delegates conference in that year was one of the things that was really did impress her, and she thought that I would make a very good senator.
Well, look like she picked a good horse. So how did you
I thoroughly enjoyed it so far. I've thoroughly enjoyed it so far.
how did you make the transition from senator to minister?
The trends. Well, first of all, I had to go from senator to MP, and as you know,
Oh yeah.
I
Sorry.
was elected February 4th in 2016, while the Progressive Labor Party was still the opposition. And you know that the announcement of my win, which came, and it was interesting because if you remember back then, Chris, the One Marine Alliance really thought they had a chance in C13 because the previous election in 2012. The margin of victory between the OBA candidate and the PLP candidate was only 19 votes for the successful Glenn Blakeney. But when we did the by-election, we increased that to I believe it was around a 260 odd vote difference. And so that was a boost for me because I did run in the 2012 election in C7, which I lost to Sylvan Richards at that time by a very large margin. And so that was my first, dipping into the candidate, for a general election pool. So I was ready in 2016 when my name was called to run during that by-election. But the transition has it's a difference between it's a difference between being an individual out in the open and talking to being a senator, a government senator, then an opposition senator, and then an opposition MP. There is a difference in the way that you approach the different tasks, and as well as then transitioning into being a government MP and then a government minister. And so I do believe during being in opposition, you speak a bit more freely than you do, because when you are the government, there's a whole lot more responsibility, and there are some things where yes, it would be much more would be much more faster to say it in a way, in some ways. In other ways, you do have to take into account that you are representing everyone, and so you choose your words a little bit more carefully, because for whatever reason, when you're in government, you're judged a lot more harshly than when you are in opposition. And so you're constantly thinking about that. But it doesn't force me to shy away from having those difficult conversations and pointing out the mistruths that are often spoken by the other side. For sure, I can go back to Wednesday when we were in the House and we heard the senator in the senator Ducuto in the Senate and in the newspaper
The,
consistently.
the UBP guy.
Yeah, well, his mother was was
No,
one of
he
the
ran for the UBP
mainstays
as
of the
well.
UBP,
He
and
ran for
he did run for the UBP, and he's constantly talking about government travel and government travel, government travel, government travel. It's almost like it's an unhealthy obsession. The way he talks about it, the way he's always on social media going on about it, and I think the public would be absolutely astounded to know that the One Bermuda Alliance spent more money on government travel in their 4 years than the PLP has spent in 6 years of budgets. And so, but that's the type of research our daily paper doesn't do, because it's so much easier to just quote something that makes it seem like that the Progressive Labor Party is doing something out of the ordinary, or something untoward, than to actually go and do the data. And so, those are the types of things that I truly enjoy doing the research on, and digging up and finding out. And I tell people all the time, this is why elections matter. This is why voting matters, right? You may not be happy with everything that the Progressive Labor Party has done, but if you look at it on its totality, this is the party that is always going to be looking out for every single person in Bermuda, and making extra care to look out for those that are less advantaged than others in Bermuda, and put things in place to ensure that they have opportunities to succeed.
Well, thank you for that. Before we make the transition into education reform, let's be frank. The OBA and that publication are working hand in hand, because every day there's a daily diet of negativity, of half truths, that that publication does the heavy lifting for the OBA, because if they say something in Parliament, the next day it's on the front page.
Yep.
You don't get that
You
type
are
of
for
press
sure.
as the PLP. It might be
No,
the
no,
same
you don't.
thing, like on the front page, online. So let's
Yeah,
just call it for what it is, right? So
yeah,
let's
yeah,
go.
yeah, I completely agree with you, Chris. It's
Right.
sometimes it's extremely frustrating to have to have a discussion in Parliament, and you may have said 100 things, but you say one thing that is negative, and all of a sudden the one negative thing becomes the headline, and the 99 positive things that were said become a summary of a couple of sentences. But for some reason, the one thing becomes almost the entire article. But we're used to that, Chris, and as you know very well, our party is built on grassroots and going on and talking to the people face to face, and so we get opportunities to tell our story at the doorstep. You will hear the One Bermuda Alliance all the time talk about when I was out canvassing, and we all know that that is just a story to tell, to make it seem like they're actually doing something within Parliament. But when it comes to actually talking to people and having grassroots reach, there is the green machine is far superior, and they know it, and it's one thing that they'll never be able to encapsulate, because they just don't have the persons with that character to do it.
Mhm. Well, let's talk about. I want to give us, before we move on, I just want to give a shout out to all the folks tuning in on Territories Talk, tuning in via Facebook, all the folks tuning in from Cayman Malroot. Hello, what's going on in Cayman? All the folks tuning in via Progressive Labor Party's page and the Old Things Bermuda Politics page, which celebrates 12 years this week. So let's talk about education reform, because at the end of the day, we aren't elected just to be elected. We're elected to progress the country.
Mm-hmm.
Over to you.
Education reform is something that's absolutely critical for us to move our country forward, Chris. Without us changing the way that we without us being able to change the way that we fundamentally look at our education system, we are always going to have the persons out there that feel that public education is inferior to private school education. I am not one of those guys that argue against public school education. I encourage parents to do whatever it is that they feel is necessary to have their children succeed. But the goal that I tell the team, and I've said it since I became minister, is the only way you get people to want to embrace public school education is that you give them a product that they want and they want to be a part of. and not just a product that persons that are within the system are only there because they just can't afford to go anywhere else. We have to be the system that shows people that yes, your children will succeed, your children will certainly benefit from being within the public school education. So when we took this over, that is always a hot topic, and it's one that's been that becomes a political football, which really annoys me, because education, the success of education is the success of a country. And if you are truly interested in your country succeeding, you will take the time to put political allegiances aside and come on board and help support moving us towards this goal. That, you know, it's like one of those things. We can disagree, but at the end of the day, use those disagreements to come and tell us, hey, here's an idea, instead of the consistent, what we find is the grumbles in the press that we didn't even know someone was upset about. You know, and so I've always maintained that our door is open for anyone to come and give us solutions, or suggest what solutions could be. Also, I do not believe prior to this PLP government that started in 2017, education just hasn't been given the attention as it deserves. The One Bermuda Alliance was government for 4.5 years, and they had 4 ministers. You know, and prior to that,
so what? One minister per year.
it was literally 1 minister per year. And then the minister that lasted the longest, which would have been Dr. Gibbons, his focus was America's Cup. And you can even look at, when you go back and look at the budgets and stuff from that year, the bulk of the funding had been shifted from education towards supporting America's Cup. And so, and you know, education is one of those things that we have to up our game, and we have to be looking to up our game on a regular basis. We can't sit on our laurels and say, hey, this is what you know, used to happen in yesteryear. Why can't we just continue to do that? Because the world changes, and the way we deliver education has to change. And that's probably been one of the biggest downfalls of public school education in Bermuda, is, you know, we just haven't shifted with the times. Our private schools have. And that's where you start to see them having the different programs. They still have the core basics, in which all systems have the core. But as you shift with the times, you add things on that can give our students the opportunities to succeed in the world they're going to face once they leave, versus trying to get them prepared for a world that just doesn't exist anymore.
So for those who locally are not sure, and those who are abroad, because we have a lot of people from around the Caribbean region that are tuning in right now, what are some of the things that prompted education reform, like birth rates and so on?
Yes, Chris. And I don't know if you wanted me to, if I could show my screen. I want to show a slide that is that's really topical.
Mhm.
And this screen, if you do bring it up, this screen actually shows the birth rate in Bermuda from 2000, the birth rate from 2008 to 2017. And what we've done is superimposed what the primary one enrollment is 5 years on from each of those years, because that's when the students will be ready. And if you look at this, you'll see as our birth rate has declined, the enrollment in public school has declined. The enrollment in private school has remained pretty steady. And so, but there are all sorts of reasons of why that could be. Unfortunately, we don't collect as much data as you know, that could really allow us to delve into what those particular issues are. But the fact that we have a declining birth rate, and we have had a declining birth rate for several decades now, is starting to truly affect the number of students that are coming into our schools. Chris, we are now back in the mid 90s. We had double the number of students that we have now, and less school buildings. Today, we have half as much students 20 plus years later, and a few more buildings to maintain. And so we just can't continue under the system where we're just keeping schools open just for the sake of keeping them open. When it's actually being injurious to our students, because of the fact that we're keeping a school open, we're not able to provide the resources that our students need more adequately. So having, say, for example, two schools in the same parish with five students in each, five students in P3. We could combine those into one class, and then that frees up a resource or a teacher to be doing something else that could be desperately needed. As we've come along, we start seeing things like we have more children with behavioral issues presenting themselves, autism, and different ailments like that we have to take care of. But one of the things you have to do is maintain a teacher in the classroom. But if you're maintaining the teacher in the classroom, that means and you're keeping teachers that occupy classrooms that are underutilized. We're now using resources that could be helping some of those students to be actually better than they are. So that is one of the reasons why we looked at, okay, we need to right size our system, first of all, and have the number of schools that can adequately service Bermuda. And then we need to look at what services we do order and right size those so we're able to give our students the best possible chances to succeed in life.
Okay. Thank you for that. One of the other questions that, for those who don't know, there's reform which is a physical plant. What
Yeah.
are some of the reform inside the actual schools itself? Because I mean, a school is just a building, right? But it's what
Yeah.
goes on inside that school that determines how our students progress or don't progress.
Well, Chris, and thank you for that because that is actually something that we truly need to get to the bottom to the nitty gritty of. We've spent the bulk of the time that we spent during doing education reform talking about what's going to happen inside of the classroom, and how do we prepare the teachers for that. And so what we've done, and I'm just showing you a couple of pictures of some of the things we're doing with our students. But what we've done is spent a lot of time creating what the inside of the classroom needs to look like, what it is that our teachers need in order to be successful to teach the new style of what is going to happen inside the classroom. And then we've taken that with the input from the teachers, with the input from the public, and said, well, now we know what we want to happen inside the classrooms. Let's talk about what buildings need to be in place in order for that to happen. I think far too many times people get caught up on, they're looking at construction in a building, but because the work of what happens inside that takes place out of the public eye, in sort of after school, during the day when they're developing this, people don't actually see that part of it, so they don't really understand how that goes. However, the methodology that we use involves not just teachers, but the public, but businesses and the like. And we want to have them be a part of this because at the end of the day, we're trying to educate children that will go into society and be productive citizens and also be employees, perhaps even employers, and create their own businesses. And so we need to understand what is it that our current employers need. I am sick and tired of hearing persons say, I'll never hire a public school student because they don't know this, they don't know that. But they won't show up to when we want to ask the questions. Well, what is it they don't know so we can make sure that we cover that? And so, there are many persons out there that will tell you what's wrong, but they don't have any answers. Those are the people that we actually want to talk to because we want to hear what's wrong, even if and simply because they don't have any answers doesn't mean that they can't come and participate. I've seen many a person, decry education reform, decry public school system, and actually finally come participate in these exercises that the education reform unit does, and then walk away with a greater appreciation of what's being done, why it's being done, and how they can participate, and even go in and encourage others to get on board and join in. As I said earlier, Chris, public education is an entire country's responsibility, and that cuts through political allegiances, that cut through racial demographics, it cuts through social economic demographics as well. If the public school system is not working properly, a country cannot prosper. And so those are the things that go on to figure out what we want to do inside of the classroom first, and then we start looking at, okay, what does the building need to look like in order to ensure that happens?
So yeah, because one of the challenges in Bermuda Cayman Islands, the Virgin Islands, Turks and Caicos Islands as prime example, is that that's again we're being frank. Too many of our young people don't want to do trades. They don't want to do
Exactly.
service industries. They have been our success over the last decades have instilled in people's minds that those things are less than. You shouldn't be. So what happens? The end result is that because our young people aren't going into these trades, then two things happen. Two negative things happen. One, our young people are not gainfully employed, number one. And two, we have to import labor from other countries. People have a right to travel and work. We have to
Mhm.
import labor from other countries to do basic things such as plumbing. I shouldn't say basic, but things such as plumbing, electrical, internet, things that we need to have a functioning society, modern society. We have to import. And in Cayman Islands, in the Virgin Islands, the majority of the workforce has to have been imported. So because your local folks don't want to do the work, that's the problem. And again, being in politics is not about telling people what they want to hear. You have to tell people what they need to hear sometimes. And you might get slammed for it here and there, but they can never walk away and say, well, Diallo didn't tell me, or well, Kenny didn't tell me, or well, Fraser didn't tell me. Tell them the truth, right?
And I completely agree with you, Chris. And that's why we have opened the trade signature up at Cedar Bridge. It's critically important for us to ensure that our students recognize this. And one of the things, Chris, that was really caught me by surprise is how much work that we've had to do to um, to get parents to embrace this, because what we've done is, because we have, we're finding students are to do this, and when we introduce them and have these, and what you're looking at in on the picture there is where we're showing one of our immersion sessions at work camp, where we introduce children to the various things that are out there. And I want to say the trades, the electrical, the masonry, the plumbing and stuff is very, very popular. And children are looking at it saying, "Ooh, I didn't realize that this was a choice and that I can actually follow." And then the difficult part then still becomes getting the parents to understand that this is a viable option for someone to pursue in Bermuda. Because I've heard from children, it's like, well, I like this, but my parents want me to do this, so this is what I'm going to do. And so we have to understand that sometimes, we have to let our children explore. We have to let them figure things out as well. As I know we have ambitions and we have things that we would love to see them accomplish, but sometimes they need to be a part of that conversation as well. And so we're truly pushing with the trades, Chris. And I know that the trades signature program up at Cedar Bridge, we have automotive technology, we have electrical and textiles and designs. So we're putting those things in place because this is what Bermuda has said we need our children to learn and know. Also, Chris, under myself, we've expanded the applied technology dual enrollment program at the Bermuda College. And this is the technical side of the dual enrollment, because people hear about the dual enrollment program at the Bermuda College and they only think about the academic portion. But there's an applied technology side that children are up there, and when they leave, they have a diploma, not a certificate in automotive, in plumbing, in electrical, in welding, and they have exposure to those types of things. And I was so gung-ho about that, is that we did create we created another scholarship or an awards program for children, for our students that do the dual enrollment applied technology, because the way the program is set up, you would need an additional year to get your Bermuda College degree. And so there's funding for that. Anyone who wants to pursue, who did the dual enrollment and wants to pursue their degree, there's funding available for you to do that, available from the ministry. So we're really looking to push. And as you know, I'm a big proponent of trades as well. And so it's one of the things that I do see future growth for our local talent within that group, but we just need our children to embrace it, be and given the opportunities to take it on and move forward with it. And if they like it, they can grow with it. If they don't like it, you always can use a trade. And no matter what you do in your life, you can always, if you know how to fix something around your house, it'll save you a whole lot of money in the future.
Yeah, so take us through quickly in the next 5 minutes. Just take us through some of the other stuff that the education reform is doing.
Chris, one thing that I do want to show, and I often say, and I'll go back to this. One of the things that we recognize is we have to give our students and our people of Bermuda the opportunities to skill themselves up, whether it be in technical or academic pursuits. And what you see here is a chart that shows what the scholarship and awards budget looked like for the last 14 years. And you see it's a really where you see the movement from green to red is transition years where the One Bermuda Alliance was elected, and where you see the movement from red to green was a transition year for when the Progressive Labor Party was elected. But as you can see, it's clearly where you can clearly see where what each party's priorities are when it comes to ensuring that our children and our citizens have access to higher education and the funding needed to pursue that. And you see, before the Progressive Labor was voted out, we were up at around $2 million per year. Virtually overnight, that dropped to almost half through the One Bermuda Alliance years. And as soon as we came back into government, that was one of the focuses that I said that I put forth, was to increase that. These funds provide funding for our children to attend the Bermuda College, but to attend schools overseas. This provides funding for adults to get funding at the Bermuda College if they wish to go and do a certificate course, or to kind of expand their horizon. So it's very critical for me, and it's very personal for me to ensure that we have the funding that's needed for our students as they move forward. Chris, one of the other things that has become as a surprise to us, somewhat of a surprise, is the amount of persons outside of Bermuda that have actually reached out to ask for, what is it that we're doing. What we're showing here is a picture of an event that myself and the head of the Education Reform Unit, Lisa De Silva, was invited to give a presentation on the challenges that we have locally, and how we're planning to overcome those challenges. This next slide is actually a meeting that we had in Bermuda. This is the Ministry of Education from Netherlands that was visiting Bermuda, and they wanted to come and speak to us specifically about our education reform efforts and how we are moving forward. And this last slide I want to show is a Zoom meeting that we had between us and the Ministry of Education in Bahamas. Again, another entity that has reached out to us to ask us for some advice on how it is that we're tackling some of the things that we're tackling. The work that we're doing here in Bermuda is being noticed outside of Bermuda, because we are sticking to it, and it's one thing we've been now at this for almost 5 years. It's not something that we've said we're going to do and then we kind of shift away from it, which is what has plagued attempts to change our education system in the past. And so we are sticking to this. We are moving forward, and I'm grateful that we are actually being noticed overseas for some of the things that we're doing. What I will encourage the listening public is to go to our website, www.learningfirstbda.com. Find out what it is that you want. There's a FAQ, or frequently asked questions section, that every time we have a meeting here in Bermuda, every time someone sends us a question, every time they see something on social media, et cetera, they add that, because those are questions. If that person's asking a question, perhaps someone else is asking that question as well. So probably maybe 90%, 95% of the questions that you may have are already been answered. And if you don't find it, please send us a message so we can find out that answer for you and put it on there. We want everyone to be involved in this process as we move forward. We want everyone to know that they have a voice. We want everyone to know that we are working hard and we are working diligently to improve our education system, but we can't do it without you, Bermuda, being behind us. Bermuda, this is your opportunity to be a part of this massive project that's going on.
Well, I want to thank you for this brief introduction. As we say, as we say in cricket sense, this is the opening bat, right? Because no, let's be real, right? Because people, education, as you say, is a barometer as to the future of a country. Because if you went back um, 60 years ago, no, I would say 50, let's go back 70 years ago. Our parents didn't get free education, right? Up to the year that I was born, black children couldn't go to certain schools. That's the reality of Bermuda. And since which blacks have used education and progress, not just black, but other people, right, have used education to progress. And that's why we have a roof over here. That's why we have steady careers. And
Hmm.
too many of our young people have decided, I don't want to do a trade. I don't want to work in a hotel. I'm not saying you have to do a trade or have to work in a hotel, but working in a trade or working in a hotel has put the roof over heads of thousands of Bermudians. And I think it's a injustice, right, as a country, that we've allowed the narrative to become that working in trades or working in the hotel or working in anything but an office is a less than. And the reality is we need our young people to have a passion for these things, have a passion for international business, have a passion for finance. But the reality is, international business and finance is not the only thing that makes a country work, right?
No, no, and I absolutely agree with you. I mean, Chris, I look at myself. I'm the Minister of Education. I have a degree in electrical engineering. I worked, in that field. But Chris, when my plumbing breaks around my house, guess who fixes it? That's me. When when there's an electrical problem around my house, guess who fixes it? That's me. Because I have experience in those fields, and I embraced them when I was younger, and I've worked in them when I couldn't find work anywhere else. And so I completely agree with you. We need to give our children the eye that they can succeed in anything that they choose to succeed in, and it's not just one pathway that will work for them. And like I said, some of it is convincing the parents as well, Chris. We have to convince the parents.
Mhm. Well, what we'll do, thank you for taking some time out on your Sunday. And what we'll do as we progress, continue to progress, we'll have you back on to speak about some milestones that have been achieved in the education reform. Because people think that, if you hear something every week, you're thinking, okay, what's this, what's this, what's this? And it's very important to show, well, here we, in 2017, we were here, 2019, we're here, 2024, we're here. And we have to continuously speak about this.
Yes, I completely agree, Chris. I look forward to coming back with this, and putting in a shameless plug. I know us Devonshire branches are having an Easter function coming up. I'm sure we'll see some posters out there, and I also want to give a shout out to all the Manchester City and Liverpool fans. Thank you for your 1-1 victory. It only helps persons like me and you.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, thank you, City. Well, I
Thank
want to
you,
thank you.
City.
And as I said, we have to tell our own story, because the newspaper ain't gonna do it. Some media outlets are not gonna do it. So we are going to tell our own story, just like our forefathers who had no media, friends in the media had to tell their own story about the work that the Progressive Labour Party wanted to do. Because if you look at most of our platforms from 1963 up to 1968, those are the things that changed Bermuda for the better for
They
everyone,
certainly have. They
right?
certainly have.
So
I often when I'm talking to my friends who support the other party, I ask them name one thing that's made a significant difference in the social fabric of Bermuda that the One Bermuda Alliance has done, and they struggle.
yeah, the airport
Absolutely.
costs money. But anyways,
Yes, we have a shiny new airport that we pay for.
yeah, I digress. I digress. But thank you, most of all, thank you to the audience that's tuning in, and I'll repeat it. People are tuning in on Territories Tour. People are tuning in from All Things Bermuda. There's a local politics page. This is 12 years old. People are tuning in on YouTube. People are tuning in from Cayman Mall Road. Big up to all my Caymanian family. See you when I get there one day. People are tuning in on Progressive Labor Party page. So with that, that's the point of order. And as we say in the PLP, what do we say?
PLP, PLP, all the way,
All the way,
PLP.
PLP.
Here you go.